Hello, everyone. We have another special episode of the Educational Leadership Podcast, and we have a special guest. Before we introduce the guest, we want to introduce our co-host, Corinne French.
Hello, everyone. So excited, as usual, to be here. Can't wait to get started.
Yes, excited. And we have Carrie Gregory from Gregory Portland ISD. Carrie, I have to ask you, is the Gregory and Gregory Portland, is that, is any relation there?
Absolutely no relation. Total coincidence. That question all the time.
You stole my first question. That was what I was going to ask, Gary.
Oh, sorry. I must have glanced at your notes or something.
I do enjoy sharing the name with the school district. That's quite an honor.
Yeah, it's very cool. And so tell us about your background a little bit.
Well, I have served on the Gregory Portland ISD school board for 8 years, I believe now. I 1 year on our education board. I have served 1 year on the TASB Board of Directors. I'm currently serving on the TASB Local Government Purchasing Cooperative Board. And that's been a great learning experience since I joined that board, I believe about a year ago. I am a first generation college graduate. But I think that lends perspective to the public education, to the role that I serve in public education. I'm not an educator by trade. I am a physical therapist, and I work in a local hospital here part-time, which I think again lends another lens to view things through in public education. There's so many similarities between healthcare delivery and public education. That could be a whole in and of itself. I have 4 wonderful, lovely daughters, all very close in age. One a junior in high school, one a sophomore, and I have 2 twins that are in 8th grade. And I saved the best for last. My wonderful husband, who is so supportive in all my endeavors in public education and all of the extra time commitment that takes. He is so supportive of that. He recognizes the importance of public education and for our daughters to see their mother in a leadership role like that. So he makes a huge sacrifice to add that value, I guess you would say, to our family. And I just love him and appreciate him for that.
Now you're going to make me cry. I'm going to I'm really thankful you mentioned the word first generation. So first generation college student, because we're having such an increase of students at where I work and we are actually creating programs to help them navigate their way through higher ed. And I love that you mentioned that. But what you just said about your spouse literally made me tear up. I served for 10 years on my board, and there's no way I could have done it without my spouse and my children sacrificing. Many times I would have a board meeting when there was a meet the teacher, or a board meeting when there was something else happening with my kids. And so thank you, first of all, thank you for that. And then thanks for mentioning your spouse, because I think our partners and our spouses and our families do take a hit for sure. And so that's really beautiful.
Right along with us, right? He hears a lot of my thinking sometimes when I come home and I'm still kind of churning and thinking, and he's just my rock.
That's beautiful. I don't think I've been able to meet him, but I hope at a future conference I get to meet him. And your girls, you have that in common with Gary. Gary has all girls. I have all boys and then 1 girl, but I didn't realize you had that many girls. So this is why this is so fun. So for our guests who are listening, many times I know a guest prior to a conversation, but I always find out something so special about them. And I think that's just what's so amazing about getting our voice out there for people to know, because you're just a regular person. You're just a regular person serving on a board. Well, you're amazing, but I'm just saying you are just people doing this work, just regular people.
Right. And a parent, like we bring that, interest and passion, parents, grandparents serve. That's kind of what sparks you to serve in the first place, is your children. Right. And so that kind of opens the door, and then you're there.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think it's something that's often forgot, that board members they have a lot of the same challenges as the community has, and they're going and serving in the evenings and making those kinds of sacrifices for the community. Now, I know we talked about this a little bit, but just for our viewers or listeners, what are you passionate about right now in public education?
Gosh, that is so hard to say because, I'm just passionate about public education in general. Yeah, I mentioned earlier being a first year college graduate. I'm actually, take it one step further, I don't know if you could really say first generation high school graduate, but in a sense, kind of. My father did graduate high school. My mother did not, and my 3 siblings did not.
Wow.
So and it's interesting because I didn't really connect the dots of how valuable public education was to my existence and my success as a person until I got on the school board, and I saw what goes into it, and I saw the huge amount of effort that's put into creating opportunities and closing opportunity gaps for students. And it really made me think back to my experience growing up in the public school system, and some teachers along the way, some counselors on the way, that I thought, you know what? I remember them planting that seed. I remember them talking to me about what am I going to do after high school, because my parents didn't really have the tools, the vocabulary, the equipment, to prepare me for that. In some household, my husband and I talk a lot because he comes from a more educated background than I do. And in his house growing up, college was not an option, it was expected. And that's how they talked about it. And I had a very different experience in my house growing up. We had very different challenges with, mental health struggles and drug addiction and things like that my parents were more focused on. And so a lot of the energy went there. But there was, oh gosh, I'm getting really personal now.
That's okay. That's okay.
There was a large gap between my siblings and I think, that kind of helped also shape my path. But I was very, very fortunate in that to have those mentors along the way and to have those people show me the opportunities that I didn't know existed.
Mm-hmm.
Really know what college was until I was in high school, probably. I think, think back. I remember watching college football with my dad, but not making the connection that that's higher education was. So to have them kind of help pave that way, and also my peers and seeing what my peers were doing. And I, was fortunate enough to follow along. And I was so fortunate to have parents that recognized that in me, and not only helped me financially with my undergraduate degree, but also my graduate degree. So
wow.
I went on to get my master's degree in physical therapy. And it was it was just the joy in my dad's eyes when I got the acceptance letter to physical therapy school. That's a memory that
and now you get to help connect those dots for your entire district. Tell us about your district. I help in a day, maybe a couple, like a day in the life of a trustee in your district, and some of the things that bring you a lot of joy.
Gregory Portland ISD, we're situated just outside of Corpus Christi. We like to say Corpus Christi is our suburb. We are up to about 4,900 students, and I think pretty shortly we're going to be hitting the 5,000 mark. We started the school year maybe around 4,700, so we've seen some fast for our district in a short amount of time. Just in this school year, it's a little bit more than usual. We are making a lot of efforts in CTE, a lot of in our CTE program, health education. We have a lot of industry in the area. So that is another focus that we're really trying to bolster and make investments in that part of our CTE pathway, to kind of see what is out there, especially in the local area, what jobs are in demand, and kind of respond to that need.
Mhm.
So that's, another exciting thing about Gregory Portland is we are in the process of constructing a brand new early childhood center for pre-K and K. And I don't know if you've ever been to Jandruco. It's going to
Mansfield. Oh my gosh. This is that would be a dream for sure. Absolutely. The district where I served is probably too small for that. But I guess if you're saying you're modeling after Mansfield's center.
And we are living the dream now. And we're going to be here when it gets finished. And we are so excited to bring that opportunity to our children and to hopefully eventually expand our pre-K program. We still just serve qualifiers, but that is a hope of mine that we can expand that to offer it to more students, more kiddos in the future.
Congratulations on that. That is a really big deal. And that's impressive.
A lot of exciting things going on in Gregory Portland. We are so excited.
So excited. It is exciting to hear your story. I mean, it's and the fact that you're a friend of Corinne, that's really cool as well. So tell me a little bit about trust, right? So as you work with the different communities, obviously there has to be that trust there between the school board and the community. What are some things that are happening, or maybe there's some things you're doing that that build that trust between the community and the school board?
Sure. Yeah. Well, we, like I said earlier, we're making a lot of investments, dollars and capital wise in that. Trust and building relationships is something that as a school board, we're making a lot of investments in as well. And I look at it as kind of like 3 different kind of buckets. You have your community, and that includes staff, students, parents, families, stakeholders, taxpayers that may not even have students, especially when we're growing fast and have a lot of projects going on. I mean, it's so important to build trust in the community, that they trust that we're doing the right thing for the students, right? Then there's the trust among the board, the team of 8. And then there's, the relationships and the trust that you build with people outside your area, such as like your state representatives, state legislatures, because that's so important as well. You have to be mindful of that relationship as well, because that's part of our job as trustees also, right? Is advocacy. So, and it, just depends on what's going on in the day of what bucket you're paying more, that you're having to give a little bit more attention to, but they're all important. And they all need to be filled, right? And you have to mind them all. So, and through all of those categories, the relationships might look different, but the trust in a relationship and building relationships is everything. It's in just any organization you're in, especially public education. It's such a personal business. We're shaping the future, so.
I like how you just mentioned like the different buckets and how you kind of have to transition in and out of those, sometimes maybe somewhat abruptly, like maybe you really didn't want to answer that question from the senator that day, but now they're going to be voting on something. So you're like, I better get to that. And so building that trust. How do you keep the balance in your life? You working in children, and I know this is taking it a different direction than necessarily trust, but how do you keep the balance in all of these things? Because I think that's something that in the last couple of years, we've all been through some really pretty tough stuff. So what does balance look like, especially as you mentioned, like navigating those buckets? I think that's great.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, because I left out a couple of buckets, right? There's your personal life and your professional life, and you have relationships and trust, that you build in those arenas as well. And it it is difficult. It is difficult to balance on a personal level. I mean, let alone, just in life, whether you're on a school board or not, right? Balancing your kids and making sure they're getting their homework done and getting them to their sporting events, balancing your job, and then those of us who are elected officials have that extra layer. And within that realm, there's 3 buckets within just that one realm. So it is difficult, but I got to mention him again. I rely on my husband so much. And in my extended family as well. My husband's mother is a godsend. I was just telling you how lucky we are to have her. So that helps juggle the schedule, right? But you also have to juggle the attention that you pay, or when you're with your children, it's difficult, but you need to be present and you need to be present. When you're with a community member listening to a concern, or listening to the state representative asking you a question, you need to be present. And that is something that can be tricky to do, to turn off the other noise and be present where you are, kind of compartmentalize what you do. But it's so important, because that person that you're talking to needs to have your full attention, but they need to know that they're being listened to. Not only are they, but they're being heard and they're being understood, and they're being empathized with. Like I said, whether it's a community member or your daughter or your spouse, you need to value their experience and their perception and their, you need to value the value that they're bringing to the conversation, or to whatever it is, whatever situation you're dealing with at the time, if that makes sense.
It does. And that can be hard in any role of leadership. It's kind of the cost of leadership, I think, to need to be able to go between those and navigating that effectively can be a challenge for sure.
Yeah. And you
Some
touched
days
on something.
we're great at it. Other days, you're firing on all cylinders. But that's the other piece of it, is we all need to give ourselves grace, right? And just try to be better today than you were yesterday. That's what I tell my.
Yes, absolutely. You touched on something critical there. It sounds simple, but it's difficult a lot of times, just because of everything we have going on, and that's listening to the community. And I know now, it seems like with public education, there's so many topics that are circulating around different subjects and so many different perspectives, whether it's, depending on the district or the district leadership or the district community. You'll talk to one district and the community will have this, big focus on something, and another community from another district is even thinking about that. But it seems like listening is the first step versus forming an opinion before hearing the community.
That is so true. We are, I'm glad you mentioned listening, because one of the initiatives we're taking as a school board, another exciting thing that's happening in GP, we recently were accepted to the Raise Your Hand Texas Board Advocate.
Congratulations. Y'all are on a roll.
We are, yeah. And we're learning so much. That is a wonderful program. I recommend every board to apply for it. It has been so wonderful. They've come to us once or twice, and then we've gone to Austin a couple times. But one of the things that they encouraged us to do, and we have adopted, is something that, and I know you guys have had Missy on before. I listened to her.
I was going to say, for our guests, we did have Raise Your Hand Texas on a while ago. So as you're listening to this episode, you can go back and listen to the one where we had Missy and Amy on last year, I think.
Yes. Yeah. That was a great episode. They encourage us to start something called listening circles. And that's exactly, Gary hit the nail on the head. That is exactly what we do. We've only done it once or twice, but it's definitely something we're going to continue, is, gather a group of people in different settings. One of the things that we are trying to be mindful of is also making it convenient for people, when we invite people. And you need to have the right conditions, right? You want to have a welcoming environment, do it at a time that is convenient for people, maybe even go where they are. One of our first listening circles was with teachers during convocation. They were already there,
Mhm.
So we had some teachers come in, present a couple of topics, and literally listen.
So I have a logistical question, or maybe more of like a governance question. How are you doing that and not, is it a public meeting then? Can the public be part of that? Because if you have more than more than 4 of you present, it would be considered you'd have to be how are you taking care of that?
Right. Yeah. Well, this first one that we've had, we only had 3 trustees there.
Okay.
Everything to keep it informal and
Mhm.
in it as well. And our superintendent has done a great job of the same thing. It's as leaders, sometimes it's hard to not talk and listen. But I think it's a skill to develop. But she had scribes and takes notes.
That's good.
Yeah, and we literally sit back and listen and just kind of soak it in and let people talk, let people share their concerns, their fears, share the positive, anything that comes to mind around those topics that we may bring up. And so that's what we've done so far, and that's what Raise Your Hand Texas recommended, was to be under quorum. When we do that, you could post it if
Mhm.
3 trustees there, if you felt like it was maybe a very important topic. Community, I know, things like safety and security and some of those hot button topics might
Yeah, might warrant having a special meeting and bring the entire public. Yeah, posting it. So I know we're running short of time. Sometimes Gary wraps this up, and I'll ask a question, then Gary maybe you can ask the last question after this. But I want to know, Carrie, what are your big dreams for public ed and for Gregory Portland ISD?
My goodness, what a question. What a question. I think one of my big dreams for public education is for a child out in rural West Texas, population, school enrollment of 100 maybe for the whole district, to be able to have the same or at least similar opportunities to a child in, say, the suburbs of Houston or Dallas. And it's going to take a lot of effort to get to a place where we can truly say that. But that, I would say, that's one of my dreams for public education, and to make sure that every child knows what their opportunities are and they're encouraged to explore them and to fulfill their own dreams and passions. And I think we do a pretty good job of that. I just want us to get to a place where there's a little more equity in that arena as far as funding, to be able to provide those opportunities to all of our children, no matter where they live.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, and funding is a passion of mine as well for school, so I can appreciate that for sure. I'm going to ask a random question now. So this is no, I've never asked this question before. Maybe it's a question we ask, on more podcasts. What other leader in public education, could be a board member, could be anyone, do you think we need to have on the podcast and interview? It's kind of a shout out, right? It's kind of like Ice Bucket Challenge, or I don't know. There's all these challenges.
Yeah, call out someone. Carrie, call out the next person.
Oh, wow. Well, we have a couple of amazing leaders here in Gregory Portland. Our superintendent, Dr. Michelle Cavazos, is a rock star.
Okay, that's it. You know how much I love female superintendents.
interesting story. Our school board last year in May of 21, we got 4 brand new trustees, all in the same election. And it wasn't necessarily a contentious election. It was because our experienced trustees decided to retire for different personal reasons. So we knew we were getting 4 brand new ones no matter what. So it was a really interesting dynamic. So, any one of them would be great to speak on maybe
Let's do it.
the perspective as a new member, because they've only been doing this for about a year now. And so I think it would be really interesting to have a conversation with someone that, as opposed to someone that's been doing it for a few years, that's been in the role for a few years, like asking questions like, what did you think it was going to be versus what?
That's great. Good question, Gary. Great answer, Carrie.
Yes. Yeah.
Thoughts when I was first on the board, like this is a little different than what I expected it, to be.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for joining us today. I can't wait to see you again soon. And it's beautiful to get to see you over Zoom. And for our guests, come back soon for her popcorn guest, those that she's suggesting.
Yes.
Gary, it was so nice to meet you over Zoom. Hopefully I get to meet you in person one day. And Corinne, wow, what an honor it is to be able to do something like this with you. You're one of my sheroes.
Oh, thank you. That means the world to me. Thank you.
Yes, exciting. Corinne's awesome as a co-host and this just a wonderful guest. Thank you, Carrie, for being on the podcast. And before we close out, we're going to give a shout out to our sponsor. Speaking of school funding, they've given over $1.5 billion to schools. Doesn't involve taxpayers, doesn't involve the government. It's they're creating basically a virtual endowment for school districts, additional revenue for school districts through energy savings, and it doesn't cost 1 penny for a school district to receive this funding. So it's kind of cool. So if you do have a district that has equity needs or just needs some additional funding, or maybe you just want to give your teachers a little bit of higher salary, right? Reach out to I Do Impact. And thank you for tuning in, and stay tuned for future episodes of the Educational Leadership Podcast. Have a great day.